Hi everyone, welcome to Leisrealtalk. I'm Lei. This is my live stream number 93. Someone suggested that I put the number sequentially, and so I counted today. This is number 33. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. Tonight we'll talk about how CCP has been preparing for a wartime capital uh, for decades. And before I get into that, I just want to take this moment to tell you that today I achieved a milestone. I hit 100,000 subscriber this morning. And to be honest, I had no idea how or when I would have 100,000 subs when I started. A year ago, my video editor asked me about my plan to reach 100,000 K subs. And my answer was I had no plan. That was my it was my belief that I should just focus on content and do it well. And I didn't know what else to do to grow my channel. Very fortunately, it seems to be working. So I want to thank everyone for being with me for the past 2.5 years. I want to thank Chris, my video editor, um, for supporting me, along the way. A few other people I want to thank: Emma and her husband, and Jennifer and her husband. I also want to thank the donors who have supported me financially. I can mention a few names here: Robert, Felix, Steve, Jean, and the list goes on. And everyone, thank you for your support. And also for the people who always join me online. Thank you, Sumilan, for I don't know your real name, but Sumilan is your name. Thank you for helping me getting organized. All right, so tonight I will talk about first Xi Jinping's Central Asia Summit in Xi'an. Then we'll talk about CCP's war preparation, and I'll share with you a historical anecdote and why Xi'an is important to Xi Jinping. And last but not least, is it his wartime capital? So without further ado, I'll start. So when the G7 summit is held in Hiroshima, Japan, Xi Jinping hosted the first China Central Asia summit in Xi'an from May 18th to the 19th. Xi'an is the ancient capital city of Tang Dynasty, which was the height of Chinese civilization and a period in which China's neighboring countries all came to pay tribute to the Tang emperor or emperors. The Chinese leader tried to recreate the splendor of the Tang Dynasty through a pageantry of I have slides to share with you. So here you see a pageantry of large Tang-style flags, ceremonial staff dressed as palace maids, and performances by court ladies. Here we go. On a large red carpet in the garden. This is in front of and I think an ancient palace. And an opulent dinner. I made a short. Oh, here are the. I think 2 of the 5 heads of state from Central Asian countries brought their wives, and then you have Xi Jinping and his wife. So there are 6 plus 3, so there are 9 people here, right? Yeah. And here's this is the actual stage, the actual place where they held the performance. You see the 9 people standing on the lower left corner. They're tiny. It just shows you the scale of the place. It's grand. And then the dinner, yeah, and an opulent dinner. And so here's the setting for the dinner. But the table that you see on the right is not the table where the heads of state sat. The heads of state sat here, and then the decorations in front of them. I have a close up. They're miniature. I think they're like a recreation of the Silk Roads with fresh flowers and these miniature display of camels and whatever. So they're very elaborate, right? Um, So it was meant to show the outside world the scene of the coming of all nations. Um, by the way, the overuse of red, just want to quickly comment on the overuse of red color. Many of you believe that red is a Chinese color, but it's not a traditional color. It's not the most auspicious color. It's a decorative color. Red, is used as a secondary decorative color, but it's not meant for a main theme color, because it's just too striking. And traditional Chinese culture, is all about harmony. So the most auspicious color in China is golden yellow. That's the royal color, and only emperors were allowed to use that color. So that yellow has always been respected as the most auspicious color, not red. So the CCP has always overused the red color. And then CCP's red, in its own words, is the red color. It's the color of blood. Seriously, it's the color of blood. So when CCP overuse red, it's just very, very bad. It brings very bad omen. I mean, who wants to see blood all over the place, right? So I know many Westerners misunderstand that red is a traditional Chinese color. No, it's not in the way the CCP has been using it. All right, so that's just a little talk on the color. So now the Chinese netizens have been comparing the Xi'an event to the G7 meetings and criticized the extravagance that the CCP has displayed in Xi'an, the dinner. So they compare the dinner in Xi'an, right, this dinner, to the dinner at the G7. So this is a work lunch at G7. And they also compare the meeting hall. This is the Chinese, the meeting hall, for the Central Asian Summit. Look at how big it is. They compare this to the G7 conference table, and then Chinese, the little pinks, the comment is say, what, they don't even have people take care of their bags. Look at Joe Biden. He threw his bags on the floor, or whatever he was, a briefcase or a folder, whatever he had, it was on the floor. And so they just throw their bags on the floor. They don't have people carrying the bags or places to put their bags. So the irony, is the world's most affluent countries, the leaders of the world's most affluent countries here gather at these small tables, talking about world affairs. And then you have the not so wealthy Central Asian countries and China, who declares it's a developing country. Show this extravagance. So you wonder if China is a developing country or a developed country, right? So, all right. So that's just a little side note on the. I thought it's interesting to compare that. I tried to show that in a short video, but the screen is too narrow to show you the comparison. Anyways, now let's talk about the summit. It is important to Xi Jinping for several reasons. The three reasons why it's important. First is geopolitical, right? Following the transit visit of Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen to the United States, a series of geopolitical events made Beijing feel very isolated. And the events include the visit of President Yoon Suk-yeol of South Korea and President of Marcos of the Philippines to the United States, the ice-breaking interactions between Japan and South Korea, and the emerging U.S.-Japan-South Korea alliance, NATO's plan to have a presence in Japan, and the G7's invitation of the 8 non-member countries to the summit. So all of these events make Beijing feel the urge to have its own event. And so the Beijing's Central Asia Summit is timed to compete with the G7. And its state media explicitly expressed this idea of competition. Let me come back. And it says, China's state media said the Central Asia Summit is, quote, a fresh stream of multilateralism multilateralism that China injected into geopolitics, which was a stark contrast to the muddy sewage that the G7's small circle created. Okay, so you get an idea. And the second importance of the summit is, aside from competing with the G7 summit, it is the Central Asian countries nonetheless have become a top priority for Beijing, given the way Russia-Ukraine war is heading. The CCP has seen that if Putin is defeated, the CCP will lose its strategic shield and become very lonely on the global stage. The Russian Empire may disintegrate and the region may plunge into chaos. And the 5 Central Asian countries thus became Beijing's strategic pivot point. And Xi Jinping pledged a total of 26 billion yuan, which is about 3.7 billion US dollars, in financial support and assistance to the 5 Central Asian countries. So they each received an average of $740 million for financial aid and support. That's not a bad deal for the 5 countries, right? So getting that amount of money each is worth the trip to Xi'an, regardless whether they like Xi Jinping or the CCP or not. So the third reason is that the summit allowed Xi Jinping to test the strength of the city of Xi'an. And that brings us to the topic of this talk, which is Xi Jinping preparing the city of Xi'an to be his wartime capital, right? That's the main topic for tonight's discussion. Now, the security measure in Xi'an in preparing for the summit was the talk of the Chinese internet. It was so strict that people are complaining. People in Xi'an are complaining. All flying objects, including drones and balloons, were banned. The city's tourist sites and hotels were shut down for days. Electronic billboards weren't allowed to be connected to the internet. They could only use like flash drives to play. So they cannot be connected to the internet. And each building in the security zone along the road that the motorcade passed had a designated official to be responsible for. And a policeman is assigned to every apartment unit in the residential buildings in that security zone. Residents living in the buildings were asked to leave voluntarily, or they must apply for a permit to return to their home. Now, these troubles could probably be reduced significantly if the summit was held in Beijing, because the capital city is experienced in handling this type of security. But Xi Jinping's choice of Xi'an as the venue for his first Central Asian summit may have been based on other special considerations. Xi'an is the most celebrated capital city of ancient China, right? It's the capital city of Tang Dynasty, which is considered the most flourishing era of Chinese civilization. And Xi'an is an inland city and is centrally located. With the rise of geopolitical tension, some say Xi Jinping intends to make Xi'an the wartime capital and his future place of refuge. And so hosting an international event in Xi'an is to getting the people in the province and also in the city prepared for a larger for either security, to getting people prepared for security measures, for security controls, and also for international exposure. Now, on May 17th, the day before the Xi'an summit, Xi Jinping already arrived in the city, and he delivered a lengthy speech to local officials. And he specifically asked the province to maintain a national perspective while taking a lead to spearhead the reform and opening up of the inland regions. And the words aren't just general or superficial expressions of encouragement from a CCP leader. Xi Jinping really meant it. He really meant that the city need to take a lead. The city of Xi'an really need to take a leadership role and need to maintain a national perspective, not a regional perspective. And because he does have high hopes of the Xi'an city. Now let's talk about his relationship with Xi'an, or really talk about how important it is to him. Since he became the top leader, he publicly, I'm only talking about the publicly announced trip that he might have visited the city privately. His publicly announced visit was at least 4 times, twice in 2015. His most important visit was in April 2020, which was the most difficult time during the pandemic. He visited Xi'an, and on that trip, he released the message of war preparation and hinted the regime may withdraw to Xi'an in times of difficulty. On that trip, he visited the Shanxi Automobile Holding Group, which is a company responsible for producing heavy-duty off-road vehicles for the PLA. And Xi Jinping then, after visiting this automaker, he then went to visit the Jiaotong University's, it's a museum called Westbound Migration Museum at the Jiaotong University. Now, the significance of this museum is that it records a piece of CCP's history of war preparation. So let me talk about this history of war preparation. So after the Korean War, tensions in the Taiwan Strait rose rapidly. It was not until President Eisenhower took place in 1954 that the U.S. enthusiasm for Taiwan was restored. In February 1954, the U.S. and Taiwan held a meeting on joint defense of Taiwan. And in May, General Chiang Kai-shek of Taiwan inspected Dachen Island in Zhejiang province to prepare for the construction of an airport on the island. At the end of 1954, the Sino-U.S. Joint Defense Treaty was signed, and the United States made it clear that it would support Taiwan militarily. In January 1955, the former USSR promised the CCP to help them with nuclear technology, and Mao Zedong was very excited about this development. In the same month, the PLA attacked the Dachen Island. So that just give you a list of events that developed between Taiwan and mainland China, and behind them between the United States and the former USSR. But the most important or the most significant development of that series of events is the USSR's promise of helping China or helping the CCP to develop nuclear technology. So late at night on April 6, 1955, the head of Jiaotong University suddenly received an order from Beijing to urgently relocate his school from Shanghai to Xi'an. Now, Jiaotong University was considered China's #1 technology school at the time. It's like the equivalent of the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology of China at the time. Moving the school westbound to the inland area was part of CCP's plan to develop nuclear technology with help from the Russians. And moving the school away from the coast was also a safety concern in the event of a potential crisis in the Taiwan Strait. 5 months later, the PLA bombed the Kinmen Islands of Taiwan. Now, today, China has 2 Jiaotong universities, one in Xi'an and one in Shanghai. At the museum that recorded the university's westbound migration history, Xi Jinping told the school, the university, to carry forward the spirit of the westbound migration. And he said this during his April 2020 visit to the school. Remember, this was the most difficult time of the pandemic. So people wonder, was that a hint that one day he would also move west, he will, when he say carry forward the spirit of westbound migration, people wonder if he was given a hint that he would move westbound to prepare for war. Now, Xi Jinping's 2020 visit to Xi'an provided also a historical comparison to the flight of the Qing dynasty ruler, the Empress Cixi, 120 years ago. In the year 1900, which by chance was also a Genzi Nian, you know how the lunar calendar repeats the year every 60 years? So 120 years ago, right, from Xi Jinping visited Xi'an in 2020. So 120 years ago, that's like 2 cycles ago. It was the same Genzi year. So in 1900, Empress Cixi fled to Xi'an during the war with the Western alliances. So Xi'an served as a wartime capital for the Qing dynasty government 120 years ago. It was in the early autumn of 1900, the Allied forces made up of 8 Western countries invaded Beijing, and Empress Cixi and the Emperor Guangxu fled 2,000 kilometers westbound to Xi'an. Because they left in such a hurry, they didn't prepare much food. They went hungry on their journey. They spent a year in Xi'an before returning to Beijing. The emperor's declaration of war against the West and her allowance of the Boxers, right, the Boxers movement, to burn churches, kill clergymen, and besiege the consulates of these countries angered the Western nations and caused the Allied forces to attack Beijing. 11 years after the empress fled to her wartime capital of Xi'an, the Qing dynasty ended or collapsed in a revolution. So people now say history is strikingly similar. So they made all these analogies between Xi'an serving as a wartime capital for the Qing dynasty and potentially serve as a wartime capital for Xi Jinping. And, so there are a lot of similarities between the two. All right, so I just gave you a historical anecdote of Xi'an as a wartime capital. Now, let's talk about why the city has always been important to Xi Jinping. Xi'an was CCP's revolutionary base before the party seized power in 1949. Xi Jinping spent his teenager years in Yan'an in Shanxi. I'm sorry, not Xi'an city. Xi'an is in the Shanxi province. So Shanxi province was the CCP's revolutionary base before it seized power in 1949. And Xi Jinping spent his teenager years in Yan'an, Shanxi, in the same province during the Cultural Revolution, when Mao Zedong sent young people to the countryside to be re-educated. The province is also where Xi Jinping's family is from. They're from the Fuping County in Shanxi. His father, Xi Zhongxun, was raised in Shanxi, and also rose to prominence within the CCP in Shanxi. In addition, it's also the place where his parents met and got married. His father's memorial park is located in Shanxi province. I mentioned this in my May 13th program titled, Is Xi Jinping Superstitious? You can check that one out. So this place is significant to Xi Jinping. The province is rich in natural resources, such as oil. So Xi Jinping's political enemy, the Jiang faction, and particularly Zheng Qinghong and Zhou Yongkang, who were active in the oil sector in China. These people have been or had been active in Shanxi's local politics for years, uh, because they control the oil industry, right? So Xi Jinping has been trying to eliminate their influence in the province in the name of anti-corruption, of course. So so the person so I just gave you all the personal reasons why Shanxi is important to Xi Jinping, and his younger brother Xi Jinping has been put in charge of the local place. Let me share it. There's a picture of him. This is Xi Jinping. This is a picture taken from his April 2020 visit to Xi'an. So here's his a picture of his brother. His brother is somehow being put in charge of the place of Shanxi. He was the president of China's International Association for Energy Conservation and Environmental Protection. Um, After Xi Jinping took power, he became the spokesman for his family, for the Xi family, attending various events in honor of his father. And most of these events took place in Shanxi, in the province, which is the subject of discussion tonight. And his role, don't underestimate his role, this guy's role. He is very influential in local politics in Shanxi. Think about it. If you're a local official in Shanxi, and here you have the brother of the big guy, right? Of course, you're gonna, do as he wishes. So that's how Xi Jinping um, has maintained his influence in Shanxi. But Xi'an is important to Xi Jinping for another reason. The CCP's Nuclear War Command Center is in Shanxi province and near Xi'an. And this is why the city is most likely the CCP's wartime capital. Under the Qingling Mountains in the Shanxi province lies the CCP's Nuclear Command Center. Do I have a picture of, here's the map of China. So the two blue lines are the two most famous rivers in China, the Yellow River in the north, and then the Yangtze River. And the shaded area in kind of brown is the Qingling Mountains. And it's in between, it was precisely in between um, the two rivers, right? The off runs of the two rivers. And it's in central China. That's just the location of the mountain. So under the mountains of this Qingling, under the Qingling Mountains in the Shanxi province lies the CCP's Nuclear Command Center. And the command center was called for by Mao Zedong in the 1960s, and it was built by the People's Liberation Army, the PLA's engineering corps. The project lasted nearly 2 decades to complete. And they built several large underground arsenals and warehouses full of weapons, equipment, supplies, and including arsenal for nuclear weapons. So this Nuclear War Command Center has several secret entry points, and the main entrance is said to be near the Chang'an district of Xi'an city. So the main entrance is in Xi'an city. And here's a view, an aerial view of the Qingling Mountains from distance. So this is the mountain view from far away. This is the highest point, the peak of the Qingling Mountain, called Taibai Shan. the nuclear war command center is precisely under, or it's near, is said to be near the peak of the mountain. Um, so it's somewhere near. It's right underneath. How to say? It's right underneath the peak of the mountain. Um, and it's said that it's at least because the peak of the mountain is 3,700 meters above sea level, and this nuclear command center is at least 2,000 meters below the, the mountain peak. So it's somewhere near that. Um, and what else do we know about this command center? It it extends, it's called it's the Great Underground Wall, right? China has a Great Wall. This is the Great Underground Wall. It extends in two directions, and one towards a place called Zhushui, and the other is towards Ningshan, and it reaches the bottom of the highest mountain crest of the Qingming Mountains. I also talk about this mountain in my May 13th program. The mountains are revered by many Chinese emperors as the birthplace of Chinese civilizations, and it's known as the arteries of the nation. Um, so Yeah, so the place is at least 2,000 meters under the mountains and can withstand, because it's deep in the mountain, it can withstand any type of nuclear weapons. That's what I read. It's a hideout place that Mao Zedong built for a simultaneous war with both the former Soviet Union and the United States at the same time. In recent years, the place was renovated to include, they built a modern living facility. They built modern, they renovated to so that it's suitable for modern living. So it's equipped with modern, um, it has a modern living facility, and also modern communication equipment. And from this underground command center, the CCP leaders, or the leader, can command all of the PLA's units, naval, land, air, and nuclear weapon forces, as well as the Chinese naval fleet in the Western Pacific and Indian Ocean. So if a war breaks out in the Taiwan Strait, Xi Jinping and other top leaders will most likely move to the underground command center under the Qingming Mountains, which is right next to the Xi'an city. And that's why Xi'an is most likely to be the war capital for the CCP. So people believe that the recent summit in Xi'an was a chance given to the local leaders in both the province and also the municipal, at the municipal level, to do a rehearsal, to prepare the city as a wartime state, or a wartime capital. So that's that's the um, the rationale. That's why people believe that Xi'an will be the city, wartime city for the CCP. All right, so I wrap up my talk, and let me see if people have questions for me. All right, let me get rid of this picture. Let me go through the super chats first. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you. All right, let me see. If you have questions, put my name in the front so I know it's addressed to me. Let me see. Okay. There are not many questions to me. Sumilan, we'll answer questions at. Oh, that's just a suggestion. Are you an enemy to China? I'm not an enemy to China. I love Chinese people more than the CCP does. Way more than the CCP does. And I think they love what I do too. I think the Chinese people generally love what I do. Okay. Let's see. Ferrari guy. Is this in the same location as the tourist version of these are that was discovered by a local few years back? No, it's not. No, of course, no. There are underground like nuclear shelters that the CCP built that they now open for tourists, but those are in other parts of China, and those I think that Beijing has designated them to be useless, so they open them for tourists um, sites. Yeah, you could see them. They're you have pictures. No, I actually have a. Do I have a? Do I have a picture? I have found. So I found this picture. So this is Qingling Mountain. I found this picture. I have no idea if this is the actual picture of this command center or it's actually a picture now open for tourists visit. I have no idea. I can't tell. It's probably a tourist picture. So here's another picture. Um, because I think there's no way they would allow people to go inside and take picture if it's still used as the command center. Yeah. So yeah, no, they're not. Um, so from Boy China, could the mountain be a refuge of the CCP from internal rebellion? 500 families, is that right? Mm, could the mountains be a refuge? Yeah, it can be. It's a hideout place, so you're right. From Robert Hawk, in case of nuclear war, how many can live underground long term? I read that some of the military personnel who helped the project dug the underground tunnels and built the command center. They never left that place. They lived there for I don't know years. The only time they left that place is when it's done. So just imagine how many years they live underground. So it's possible then they live there for a long time. From Jeff Ramos, congratulations. Show us a picture of the summit round table. Do you think they can hear each other? Oh, I showed the pictures in the beginning of here's the picture. Here's the picture of the summit table. So this is the summit table of G7, right? And Chinese commented say, "Oh, they must be poor. Japan must run out of money. They don't have money to even host a G7 appropriately. Look at the world leaders. They put their bags and folders on the floor. Wow, how disgraceful. And look at the Chinese. Um, we host our summit, in grand style. Well, it's just a matter of, spending priority, right? So here are the pictures. Thank you. Um, thank you. Travel with love. Thank you. All right. All right. That seems to be all the questions. Okay. All right. Really, no questions for me. All right. Well, um okay, here's from Ed C. A friend in Beijing says that no one wants to move to Xi'an. Do you think most everyone feels this way? Yes, I think most everyone feels this way. Nobody wants to move to Xi'an. But you live in a communist state. What if the government forces you to? Like you will lose your job. If they move an entire company, an SOE, or a research institute, or a school, or some kind of government agency to Xiong'an. Uh, if you don't move, you'll lose your job. Then people will have to move. Will have to move, but people don't want to move. That's right. Um, for Max Shredder, which city is better, Xi'an or Dalian? Well, they're different. Xi'an is in inland. Um, Xi'an is an ancient capital. I mean, the city of Xi'an is full of ancient historical sites and buildings and relics. It's just one of the most famous ancient capital city of China, whereas Dalian is on the coast, right? So they're different. Um, from Fred King, like, do you think China really wants to get into a war, or just posturing to show strength? War is pretty expensive. That's a very good question. I'm making a video about Xi Jinping. I made 3 videos about CCP leaders' motivation uh, for war, and I'm making one about Xi Jinping's motivation for war. Right, so stay tuned. It's coming. Um, Jeff Ramos, is this city Xi'an has good feng shui? Well, I think it's at this point probably not, because remember I said the mountain, the Qingling Mountain, is revered um, as the place, as the source, the birthplace of Chinese civilization, and ancient Chinese emperors believed that anything you build on the mountain bring you bad luck. And there have been historical anecdotes where, like, the Efang Gong built by the Qing emperor brought the dynasty to its end. And also in the Tang Dynasty, they built Hua Qingchi. The emperor built uh, a pond, and then he saw a rebellion, broke out. So it's generally believed that you don't want to build anything, on the mountain. Well, what the CCP dug from underneath the mountain and built a few arsenals underneath it. I don't think it's good luck to them at all. So if you ask me whether it's good feng shui, I don't think so. Moonwalker, CCP moves to Xi'an during wartime. Does that mean that they're willing to sacrifice Shanghai and Beijing? Yes. Yeah, yes. And there is a general, the PLA general during Jiang Zemin's time, who even talked that, I mean, the CCP has always been preparing for war. Even don't think that this is new to them. During Jiang Zemin's time, I read that they are willing to give up everything to the east of Xi'an. They want to retreat to Xi'an and hold on to the territory to the west of Xi'an, and they're willing to give up everything to the east of Xi'an, and that includes all the Shanghai, Beijing, all the affluent, the wealthy provinces on the coast. They're willing to give up all of that area. Yeah, and that would be like their negotiation with whoever they're fighting, probably the United States, because the USSR is no longer, right. It's already. I mean, at the time when they built the underground command center, it was to assume that when they will fight with both the USSR and the United States, but at this point, it's just the United States. Um, okay, all right. Xi'an or Zhengzhou? Uh, for what though? No, not Zhengzhou. Zhengzhou is not doing very well financially. The city has a lot of issues. All right. Yeah, you're right. Jairo Herrera, the CCP will not care how many people they left or will get vaporized during a nuclear war. Yes, I agree. All right. Thank you very much. And think I answered all the questions. Who sponsored this channel? Anyone? Unfortunately, no. I only had one sponsor. What's that? It was a brand to sell men's accessories. I was more than a year ago. Um, you want to sponsor me? You could donate money here to sponsor me. I rely on donors, viewers' donation to make these videos, and I want to thank them and people who contributed to super chats and super stickers here. Thank you very much, and I'll end it here. All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.